Hi everyone, my name is Ashley Lee, and today I am going to be finally doing a video about my PhD journey. So it's funny because when I first started my PhD in curriculum and instruction in the summer of 2020, I was like, I really need to vlog this experience just because it's one of those experiences where, like, literally, not many of us have the opportunity to go through. And so my intention was to start to vlog it like every semester starting in 2020. Here we are now, year 3 of my PhD journey, and I'm just now vlogging. So I hate that I wasn't able to capture how I progressed through up until now because it has been truly transformative, but that's okay because at least I'm starting now and I'm able to, talk to you all about it. So let's go ahead and get started. So I don't have a whole lot of questions from people. I really only have one question, so I'll answer that later on. But what I do want to do in this video is just talk about the process of, or kind of like how the process is going with me having a year and a half left, and just open up the floor to any questions that you have. I do want to start to regularly vlog now that I have my channel up and running, and I do want people to ask questions because I'm going to be open and super transparent about a lot of things just because it is one of those things where, quite frankly, it's hard. It's been very difficult. But like I said earlier in the video, it also too has been super transformative. So let's jump right into it. All right. So I started my PhD in the summer of 2020. Trying to think, should I say my school's name? Well, I'll go ahead and tell you school at Mercer University. So if you live in Georgia, you are probably familiar with Mercer. Mercer has its larger campuses in Macon, Georgia. That's the undergraduate campus. It's where the School of Law, the medical school is, the main medical school campus. The medical school actually has other campuses now. I think there's one in Columbus, and then there should be one. Excuse the noise. My dog is digging in his bed for nothing. Onyx. Anyway, so and then you have the Atlanta campus, which is the graduate studies campus, which is where a lot of the nursing students attend. All students in Tip College of Education, whether you're working on a master's, specialist, or PhD, attend. Physical therapy. It's quite a big campus. They have dorms and student housing. Well, they have student housing, not dorms, because everybody that's in graduate campus is grown. But they have a lot of the same things as the campus in Macon. So I am at Mercer University. My area of focus for my PhD is curriculum and instruction. I do want to talk to you all about the process for when I first applied. So I applied to 3 schools for my PhD. I applied to Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore. They have it's a it's virtual, but kind of hybrid, which I'll talk about the difference in just a second. So Johns Hopkins has it where basically you're virtual throughout like the school year, so August through May, and then the summer I think you go for like a few weeks. So it was pretty flexible. However, Johns Hopkins was not a PhD program; it was an EDD program. I believe they have a PhD in education program, but that is, from my knowledge, if I'm not mistaken, in person. Then I applied to Georgia State University, which has a PhD program, and it's all in person. What I really like about Georgia State, though, is that they have a lot of different concentrations. Like you can do a PhD in like elementary math or like literacy. So it's super specialized versus like Mercer is everyone that works in K-12 education pretty much does curriculum and instruction. And then I have members in my cohort, which I'll talk about in just a second, like what a cohort is and all that, who already work in higher education. So like I have a classmate that is already a professor at Spelman. I have a classmate that's a professor at Georgia Military College. One is a professor at Fort Valley State and I think Gordon College. So they're all in that space. So one is at Miles College. So they already have roles in higher education and are pursuing their PhD. So they are the ed leadership track, which I'll get into the different tracks in just a second. So anyway, I applied to 3 schools. I got into 1.5. Let me tell you what that means. So quite naturally, of course, I got into Mercer. That's why I'm here now, year 3. And then I kind of got in Georgia State. So when I applied to Georgia State, I applied to get my PhD in secondary mathematics education. But because at the time I was an elementary school mathematics specialist and everything that I wrote about in my personal statement and application was around elementary school math, they denied me for that program, recommended that I resubmit for elementary ed. And essentially, I guess would be like a shoe-in to get into that program. Well, I didn't want to do that because for me, my background is mathematics, not elementary education. I just happened to come from an elementary school at the time I was working, elementary school. And that's where I was at. But I was a math specialist at an elementary school. Prior to me working at the elementary school as a math specialist for 3 years, I was a middle school math teacher for 6 years. I worked for the National Math and Science Initiative for 2 years. So math is my thing, is my background. I've never taught anything else but math. So I didn't want to do early, or I think elementary education. I think that's what it was. I wanted to do math. So I was like, thanks, but no thanks, which led me to Mercer. Oh, and then John Hopkins I didn't get into, which John Hopkins is highly competitive. Great school. So I knew, that would be a shot in the dark. But I wanted to apply just because they are a great school. So I wound up starting my PhD in the summer of 2020 at Mercer University. So at Mercer, they do the cohort model, which is pretty neat, but sometimes annoying. And I'll tell you why. So a cohort. So Mercer admits one cohort group of PhD students in education one time a year. So I applied in the fall of 2019. Well, first of all, I went to, and one of the other reasons why I wanted to go to Mercer is because they were the only school where I was able to go in person and actually meet at the time Dr. West, who was who was over the PhD program. And so you're able to meet professors, you're able to meet the head professor in charge, you're able to ask questions. So when I went to the campus and did like the meet and greet, it was literally me and two other students, I think, two other people who actually ended up getting in and are part of my cohort, which is so ironic. But we were able to sit and ask questions. Georgia State and John Hopkins did have like webinar sessions. So like they did have days where you can do like webinars and virtual things, which was cool. But I really liked that Mercer. I could go to the campus, sit in actually one of the classrooms where I would eventually be taking classes and ask questions. It was really intimate and I liked it. And then to be honest, like in Georgia, most teachers, I mean, not most teachers, but a lot of teachers in Georgia, or at least the schools I've worked at in Atlanta public schools, a lot of them go to Mercer for like their master's or in their specialists. So, and everybody that I talked to who had attended Mercer for either their master's degree in education or their specialist degree in education always had great things to say about it. So for me, it was just like, this is a place I need to be. And in hindsight, I'm really happy that I chose it. So Mercer does a cohort model. So my cohort started off with 17 of us. And then you have, so what you do is in that cohort, you all take classes together for the entire duration of your program. And so you stay together. So at Mercer, you can't like start in that fall. You have to start that summer with your cohort. So my cohort was 17 of us. At the time, it was 16 women and 1 man. Now we're down to 12, which is crazy. And I'll get into that in another video because our dean told us everyone would not make it. And that is a fact. And when you lose a cohort member, it feels like you're almost losing a family member. Yeah. The background of my cohort. So my cohort was pretty much split up almost equally, I believe. I think there were 9 CNIers, so curriculum and instruction. Those of us that have a focus in curriculum instruction, we come from a K-12 education background. So in other words, curriculum instruction focused people work in a K-12 school. They work in elementary school, middle school, high school. Simple. Teaching a subject or subjects. And then you have ed leadership, educational leadership. Those are my cohort members who are already working in colleges, like I mentioned before. So I think we were 9 and 8. I think it was 9 at the time we started. It was 9 curriculum and instruction and 8 higher ed. Or maybe 10 and 7. I can't remember. I know it's always been more curriculum and instruction, which is typical like that at Mercer. You have more curriculum and instruction to higher ed just because most people work in K-12. So that's how it began. So we began virtually in the summer of 2020. What's interesting is that my cohort's nickname is the COVID cohort because we are the only cohort that in the history of the program that started off completely virtually for the first year. So Mercer has a hybrid model. So we'll get into that. So hybrid model is where you do virtual and you come in person. So most PhD programs, to my knowledge, it's either a hybrid model or they're solely in person. That's one of the reasons why I chose Mercer, because I knew I wasn't going to do 100% in person. That's another reason why I really wasn't that sad about getting to Georgia State, because theirs is 100% in person. Well, it was their PhD program. It could have changed by now. So for me, Mercer was the right place because I like the hybrid model. So how it works for us is that we, well, not in 2020, going to 2021 because it was COVID. But now what we do is we do Zoom classes during the week. So we take 2 classes a semester, unless you're taking like an elective. One semester I took 3 classes. Actually, 2 semesters I took 3 classes. No, one semester I took 3 classes. I think. I can't remember. Yeah, it's becoming all a blur. So you meet weekly. So like for this semester, my classes are every Tuesday and every Wednesday from 5:30 to 8 p.m. on Zoom. And then one Saturday a month, we have class in person all day from 8:30 to 5:30. And actually it's not every month, it's 3 months out of the semester. So this semester starts January 9th, ends May 6th. We have a Saturday class in January, a Saturday class in February, and a Saturday class in April. So it sounds like a lot, but in hindsight, especially when you don't have to necessarily go in person all the time. Like I know somebody at Georgia State right now that goes in person, which is crazy. So, well, to me in my schedule, I can't do that, especially with me traveling for work now. I no longer work in like elementary school in Atlanta. I now travel. So for me, it's just, yeah. And it's just a lot more convenient for a lot of people. That's one of the things I love about Mercer. It's the hybrid model. I really do. So we were considered the COVID cohort because for a year and a half, I never met my cohort in person. We had virtual classes for a year and a half from summer 2020 to summer 2021. And those Saturday courses, you had to be on Zoom from 8:30 to 5:30. You still got your hour, I think hour and a half break for lunch like we would in person. But yeah. So that's a little tidbit. The 2020 cohort for PhD studies at Mercer, Tift College of Education, nicknamed the COVID cohort. So that's the model. I do want to back up a little bit though and talk about my why. So why did I decide to get my PhD? Because I think that's really important. And actually my why is interesting. So at the time I applied for my PhD, I was a mathematics specialist at an elementary school in Southwest Atlanta. So a bit of my background is that I've only worked in Atlanta Public Schools school district. Right now, so I transitioned earlier this year. Yeah, we're still in 2022. I transitioned in March into ed tech, working for a ed tech company. So now I don't work in APS at all. But I've only ever worked in Atlanta Public Schools for 10 years and only 2 schools. I worked at a middle school, well, a 6th to 12th grade school. I taught middle school math, and I worked as a math specialist at elementary school. So at my school that I worked at, I enjoyed it a lot. But to be honest, I kind of started to feel a bit stagnant, which is why I chose to leave and get my PhD. One of the reasons why I decided to get my PhD is because I wanted to expand my options. I have never been the person that wanted to be a principal, even though from the time I started teaching, everyone has been trying to push me into that direction that I work around. I think it's because I have natural leadership abilities. I'm highly organized. I'm pretty good. I'm a pretty good communicator, even though it's probably not coming off like that right now. And people respect me and I build really good relationships with people. But that's never really been what I wanted to do. I've always wanted to work in education, but never wanted to necessarily be a principal. So getting a PhD, I wanted to have the autonomy to teach higher ed education. So my goal still is to get into the space of teaching higher education, essentially teaching teachers at the collegiate level, particularly student teachers. We call them MAT teachers, Master of Art and Teaching teachers. Those are teachers who are like me, did not go through the traditional route in majoring in education undergrad. So my major is animal science. Shout out to Fort Valley State University, the greatest university in the world. And I decided to teach maybe a year after I graduated from Fort Valley. So I did Georgia Teaching Fellows and eventually got certified through Georgia TAP. My master's is in middle grades math, but not my bachelor's, not my undergrad degree. So I really want to teach MAT students, those who are not, and masters of ed, and of course doctoral students, but particularly masters of art and teaching students, those who do not have that traditional background in teaching. I want to teach them because it's very different when you come from. So it's 2 things. It's typically teachers that come from the non-traditional route. They're either fresh out of college, like I was, and a lot of my friends, or they are what we call in education career changers. So those are people who may have worked in a sector, let's say Fortune 500 company, 5-6 years, and decide to get into teaching. So either way, it's difficult because you have to learn not only your content, But really, the most important thing to learn is the pedagogy, the technique, the strategies, the art of teaching, which, to be honest, some people have it naturally. I think I have it naturally, so it's a bit easier for me. And then there's others who don't and quite frankly need support. So in my space now where I go and do professional development for my company I work with, a lot of teachers that do well with our product really have that natural ability or have been trained, on pedagogy, and those that don't struggle. So I want to teach courses that really look at what we call they're more of your methods courses. So methods are like content. So methods mixed with pedagogy, just teaching teachers content through the art of teaching, those research-based strategies that we know really work to help and support and move students. So yeah, so that is kind of it. I feel like this video is starting to get long. It's almost 20 minutes. So I do kind of want to stop there. I will do additional videos. I know I do want to do a video that specifically talks about the different research that I've done. So as a doctoral student, especially if you want to transition into higher education, it's not enough to just make A's in your classes and turn in your papers and that's it. You also have to do outside research. So you also have to go to these different conferences that are recognized nationally, globally, write papers, do a lot of presentations. So I was able to do a lot of that when I took a year off from working, which I do want to talk about because I get a lot of questions like, how do you do it with working? And there's ways around it as well. So what I would like for you all to do is leave me questions that you have in the comments. Any questions that you have about my journey that you would like for me to focus on. I would love to make videos and blog about them. I'm going to try to make a video at least once a month, twice a month if I have time. But I really do want to talk about it. I also want to talk about being a Black woman in this space because that is something that is really important to me. Also to my area of research is around equity and elementary mathematics, particularly like looking at anti-racist practice and culturally relevant teaching. So I do want to talk a bit about that, like that critical education, critical race theory, and all of those kind of theories that fall into that bucket, and how personally as a Black woman, when I show up at conferences talking about how our system is embedded in white supremacy, that looks like it. So those are things that I want to talk about. And really any questions that you have. It has been a really transformative journey, to say the least. Like I have grown not only academically and professionally, but I've really grown as a woman. Like I feel like I started off as like, I wouldn't say a girl when I started my PhD journey, but I definitely started off not as self-aware. And now I'm so much more self-aware. And because I have had to have just tough conversations with people about so many touchy subjects, such as race, such as equity, such as those different things, it has made me so confident in who I am, so proud of who I am, so proud of where I come from, so proud of being raised in a city like Atlanta, Georgia that embraces diversity and quite frankly, where African Americans are thriving. It also makes me thankful for my wonderful family that I come from. I come from a very just awesome lineage. And so just thinking about how I grew up and the different experiences I've had and kind of connecting it to my PhD journey and my research and my writing has helped me a lot. So I want to talk about a lot because I have a lot to talk about. And I didn't want to make this video too long. I just really wanted to kind of talk to you all about kind of my why and what I have going on. There's a lot of nuances to working on a doctorate, such as just taking the GRE prior to, which I can get into, and me prepping for that and how I did not do good. Because I'm not going to take a standardized test. Most people aren't, especially minorities. That's a whole nother topic for another time. But anyway, any questions that you have, drop them in the comments. Send me a message on Facebook or Instagram. And I will see you all in about a month or so, hopefully sooner. I'm going to upload this if I can on December 31st. It's New Year's Eve right now. But if I do not, it'll be on New Year's Day. So Happy New Year. Until then, see you all later.